Truth one, your financial advisor might not actually be a financial planner. Most Canadians think they have a financial planner. And what they actually have is someone who manages their investments and sends them a quarterly statement. And those two things are significantly different. A portfolio manager picks your investments and watches the market. A financial planner builds a strategy around your entire life, your tax situation, your withdrawal sequence, your estate plan, your CPP timing, your OAS exposure, your insurance that you might need, your goals, your values. Your portfolio is just one piece of that entire puzzle, and it's an important piece, but it's just one piece. So here's the test. If your advisor has never asked you about your tax strategy, has never walked you through what happens to your accounts when you die, has never really modeled out your retirement income year by year, and has never asked you what actually matters to you beyond discussing your rates of return, and probably with all due respect, they're not really planning for you. They're just managing that investment portfolio with blinders on to the rest of what's actually in your life and hoping the rest just works out. And hope is not a retirement strategy. Truth two, you'll probably die with too much money, not too little. The biggest risk in retirement isn't running out of money. For most Canadians with decent savings, the actual risk is the opposite, dying with way too much. What I see a lot of is Canadians who spend 20 or 25 years of retirement being extremely afraid to book that trip they've wanted, afraid to help their kids with the down payment that they're too reluctant to give, afraid to enjoy the wealth they've spent the entire life building. I've actually sat with clients who've had $2 million saved, we're living on $60,000 a year and just not spending enough. When we run that plan and stress test it against every bad scenario we could think of and show them they could safely spend $100,000 or $150,000 or even more, and they'd really still hesitate out of fear, because that fear of running out of money is so deeply wired that no spreadsheet can fully override it. And then what happens? They pass away at 84 with 1.5 million still in the RIF, and the government takes $700,000 or $800,000 of it in taxes. And that money that they were too afraid to spend just ends up going to the CRA instead of their family. So the biggest risk isn't running out of money, it's running out of time to actually enjoy the money that you've saved. Truth three, the government wants you to retire just on their terms. Here's something I want you to understand about the Canadian retirement system. The defaults are not designed to optimize your outcome. They're designed to be simple for the entire country. And there's a massive difference. CPP starts at 65 by default. But if you defer and delay to age 70, your benefit's 42% higher permanently for the rest of your life, indexed to inflation. OAS starts at 65 by default. Delay that to 70, it's 36% higher. So your RSP converts to a RIF at age 72 by default, and the government starts forcing money out to you whether you need it or not. And every single one of those defaults I've just mentioned benefits the government more than it benefits you in most cases. You take the CPP early, they pay you less for life. You don't melt down your RSP. The forced withdrawals push you into higher brackets and trigger clawbacks that send money right back to them. So the system rewards people who make active, informed choices. It really punishes people who accept the defaults without pause, without asking, is this really what I should be doing? And in my experience, almost nobody asks these questions because nobody tells them. They've watched their parents and their grandparents spend their life doing exactly the same thing. Truth four, 4% rule, it's a starting point. It's not a strategy. I hear this constantly. My plan is to withdraw 4% a year. Okay. And look, as a rough starting point for a napkin calculation, it's fine. It gives you a pretty good ballpark number. But if that's your entire retirement strategy, we're going to have a problem. The 4% rule was based on a study from the 1990s using American market data. It doesn't account for Canadian tax systems or tax brackets. It doesn't account for OAS clawbacks. It doesn't account for RIF forced minimums. It doesn't account for that Harley Davidson and fishing boat that you probably always wanted to buy, or that year-long sabbatical your spouse is planning but hasn't mentioned yet. It assumes you spend the exact same amount every single year for 30 years, which is not how any human being actually lives. In fact, you haven't spent the same amount every week since your parents gave you a $5 a week allowance. So it's just unrealistic. In reality, most retirees spend far more in their 60s and early 70s. That's when they're traveling and renovating their house, maybe helping their children. Spending drops down in the mid 70s and mid 80s. I see this often. It can then spike up again in your late 80s and 90s especially if you need long term care of health conditions.